My name is Alice. I'm 28 years old. If someone had told me years ago that my stepmother would one day try to take over my wedding, I would have laughed. But here I am, 3 months away from marrying the man I love, and instead of choosing flowers or music, I'm fighting over who walks me down the aisle. To understand how I ended up here, you'd have to go back to when I still believed love could fix everything. When I was little, my world revolved around my parents, Claire and Tom. They married young, had me when they were 25, and seemed inseparable. Every weekend, we'd drive to my grandparents' lake house. Dad would teach me how to fish, and Mom would sit on the pier with a paperback and a sun hat, pretending not to notice when he accidentally splashed her with water. Every Friday, game night. Every bedtime, stories read in turns. I thought we were unbreakable. Then, around the time I turned 10, the laughter thinned. Dad started coming home late. Mom began making dinners that went cold on the table. They whispered in the kitchen when they thought I was asleep. I used to sit on the stairs in my pajamas, listening to the low rumble of their arguments. One name kept surfacing: Tanya. I didn't know who she was, but I hated her already. The night everything shattered, I came home from school to find Mom at the kitchen table, her face blotchy and her eyes raw. She tried to smile when she saw me. "Sweetheart, sit down. I need to tell you something." Her voice trembled as she said Dad had fallen in love with someone else, his coworker, Tanya, and that they were getting a divorce. I remember the metallic taste in my mouth, the sound of the refrigerator humming too loudly. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, staring at the floor tiles, trying to find a crack big enough to fall into. The months that followed were a blur of slammed doors and court dates. I remember sitting in a courthouse hallway, legs swinging off a bench that was too high for me, hearing my parents' voices echo through closed doors. Custody, visitation, property. Words too heavy for a 10-year-old to understand. Mom got primary custody. Dad was granted every other weekend visits. At first, I refused to go. I told Mom I hated him, that he had ruined everything. She cupped my face and said softly, "Your father made a mistake, but he still loves you. It's okay to love him, too." I didn't want to believe her, but eventually I did. Dad took me to the movies, tried to cook pancakes that turned black, taught me card tricks, and asked about school. Slowly, I forgave him, or at least I thought I had. Then, 2 years later, he announced he was marrying Tanya. I met her for the first time at a dinner Dad arranged. She was polished, smiling too wide, holding out a gift before she even said hello, a diary with my name engraved on the cover. "For your stories, NNA," she said. "Every girl needs a place to keep her secrets." Her perfume was too sweet, her laugh too rehearsed. I forced a smile and whispered thanks, but inside I could feel my chest tighten. She was the woman who took my family apart, and now she wanted to be part of mine. Tanya tried hard. Too hard. Every visit came with gifts: books, clothes, art sets, and plans for mother-daughter days. I played along, but the guilt of enjoying any of it had felt like betrayal. And worse, she always spoke about my mother as if she were some bitter ghost haunting our lives. "Your mom should really move on, don't you think?" she said once, brushing crumbs from the table. "She's fine," I replied quietly. Dad would sigh. "Alice, she's just trying to help." No, I thought, she's trying to replace her. By the time I was 16, their house felt like enemy territory. Then Tanya got pregnant. Dad was ecstatic, glowing in a way I hadn't seen since before the divorce. "We're finally going to have a real family," he told me. Those words cut deeper than he realized. But the baby never came. Tanya miscarried at 20 weeks. The grief was heavy and strange, part sorrow, part relief, and then guilt for feeling any relief at all. Dad told me Tanya would need extra love from me, that we all had to help her heal. So I tried, I really did. But every time Tanya called me my daughter, something in me recoiled. She started introducing me that way to her friends, pretending we were closer than we were. When she asked me to call her Mom, I refused. That led to the worst argument we'd ever had. Dad sided with her. He always did. After that, I pulled away. College became my escape. I studied journalism, joined the campus paper, and met Richard, the one person who listened without trying to fix me. His family was calm, ordinary, unbroken. I remember visiting his house for the first time and feeling jealous that dinner didn't end with slammed doors. I thought the chaos was finally behind me. But families like mine don't stay quiet for long. Because now, at 28, as I plan the happiest day of my life, that old fracture has reopened. Tanya, My stepmother, the woman who once asked me to call her mom, has demanded to walk me down the aisle, and when I said no, she cried as if I'd stabbed her. Dad's furious. He says I'm cruel. Tanya says I've never given her a chance. And I can't tell anymore whether I'm defending my boundaries or reliving my childhood war. One thing is certain, though. This time, I won't let anyone else decide what family means to me. Because back then, I thought the worst thing that could happen was losing my father. I had no idea the real storm was still years away. After that night, when Tanya burst into tears over the phone, claiming I'd crushed her heart, I couldn't stop replaying the past. Every strained dinner, every forced smile, every moment she tried to make us something we were never meant to be. When my father married Tanya, I was 12. The wedding was small but suffocating, like a performance where everyone pretended not to notice the cracks in the set. Tanya wore a pearl dress that shimmered under the church lights, and when she looked at me walking down the aisle throwing petals, she smiled as if she owned that moment, and me along with it. She was determined to be my mother from the first day. "You'll see," she told me during our first weekend together after the wedding. "We'll be best friends before long." I didn't answer. My real mother, Claire, had taught me that silence could be its own kind of armor. The gifts continued. Birthdays, holidays, even random Tuesdays. Always boxes wrapped in pastel paper. Always cards signed, "Love, Mom." Once, she booked a weekend spa trip for just the two of us. I went because Dad begged me to. She talked about skincare, her miscarriage, and how lucky she was to finally have a daughter to share life with. I listened, nodding at the right moments, counting the minutes until I could go home to my real mother's kitchen that smelled of soap and tomato soup. Tanya wasn't cruel. That was the hardest part. Her kindness was so persistent it began to feel like pressure. Every favor had a string attached. Every "I love you" felt like a test I was supposed to pass. And Dad, he never saw it. He was blind to the quiet manipulation that pulsed under her soft voice. Whenever I tried to talk about it, he'd say, "Alice, you're old enough to know Tanya's trying. She's doing her best." Doing her best. Those words followed me through adolescence like an unwanted echo. When Tanya got pregnant, I saw something new in her, a kind of joy that almost made me forgive everything. For a few short months, she didn't hover over me or try to mold me. She was too busy dreaming about the baby. She decorated the nursery in lemon yellow. She started humming when she cooked. Even Dad seemed lighter. Then, one afternoon, I came home from school to find her collapsed on the couch, clutching her stomach, crying. The baby was gone. I stood frozen by the door as Dad rushed her to the hospital. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed that night, hearing their muffled sobs through the walls, and feeling something awful. Relief. Relief that maybe, just maybe, the attention would shift away from me again. I hated myself for that thought. The next morning, Dad told me Tanya needed me. "She's hurting," he said, voice breaking. "We all have to be gentle with her. She lost her child." I nodded, but inside I thought, she's not the only one who lost something. After the miscarriage, Tanya clung to me even tighter. She started calling me sweetheart, hugging me for too long, showing up at my school events uninvited. When she introduced me to her friends as my daughter, I bit my tongue until it bled. One day she said, "It would mean so much to me if you called me Mom." I remember the pause that followed, like the whole house was holding its breath. "I already have one," I said. Her face twisted for just a second, hurt, anger, something darker. But then she smiled again and said, "Of course, I understand." She didn't. From then on, our relationship was a battlefield disguised as politeness. I'd avoid family dinners, pretend to study when she visited, and always, always keep a piece of myself locked away. My mother, Claire, never badmouthed them. She'd just say, "They're not your enemies, Alice. They're people who made choices. You can't control that. You can only control how much space you let those choices take in your heart." It sounded wise back then. But wisdom doesn't help much when you're 17 and watching your father play house with the woman who tore his marriage apart. Years passed. I moved out for college, found freedom in distance. Tanya's calls dwindled, but never stopped. She'd send holiday cards signed with too many hearts, and every one of them went into the same drawer I never opened. By the time I graduated and got engaged to Richard, I thought the past had settled, like dust on old photographs. I was wrong. When I told my father and Tanya that my mother would walk me down the aisle, the temperature in the room changed. Dad froze, the muscles in his jaw tightening. Tanya blinked fast, her lips trembling like a child about to cry. You can't mean that, she whispered. After everything I've done for you? I tried to stay calm. I appreciate what you've done, but Mom isn't the only one who raised you, she cut in, her voice cracking. I was there too. I stayed. I tried. And you're just erasing me? Dad's voice thundered in next. Alice, she's right. Tanya's been a part of your life for years. She deserves a place in this wedding. I'm not erasing anyone, I said, my voice shaking now. I just want Mom to walk me. That's all. Tanya buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Do you have any idea how much this hurts? Yes, I did. But I also knew that if I gave in, my wedding wouldn't belong to me anymore. Richard tried to comfort me that night. You're not cruel, he said softly. You're just tired of being the peacekeeper. I wanted to believe him, but guilt has a way of creeping back in, especially when family uses love as a weapon. That night, I stared at the wedding invitation mock-ups spread across my desk and wondered how something so beautiful could carry so much pain. Because deep down I could feel it again, that same heaviness I felt when my parents divorced. Only this time I wasn't a child watching it happen. I was the one standing in the center, trying to hold everyone's version of love together. And I knew something had to break. The day after the argument, my father stopped answering my calls. His silence was louder than shouting. Every time I looked at my phone, there was nothing. No missed calls, no messages. It was as if I'd been cut out of his life all over again, just like when he left my mother. Richard tried to distract me with wedding errands, but every little thing reminded me of the fight. Picking out flowers, I imagined Tanya crying over the phone. Choosing music, I heard Dad's voice calling me ungrateful. It all blended into one endless ache. A week later, Dad finally called. His voice was clipped, formal. We need to talk, he said. Dinner, tomorrow night. When I arrived at their house, Tanya opened the door. Her face was pale, her eyes red, mascara streaks still visible. Alice, I need to, she said softly, like we were meeting after years of war. I'm glad you came. Inside, the house smelled of lemon polish and candle wax, Tanya's usual attempt at perfection. Dad sat at the dining table, arms crossed. He didn't look at me when I entered. For a long moment, none of us spoke. Then Tanya whispered, We're not trying to take your mother's place. I wanted to share that moment with you. The aisle. It means something to me. Why? I asked quietly. Why does it matter so much? Her lips trembled. Because I've spent years trying to be part of your life, and every time I think I've reached you, you pull away. I just wanted one moment where I could feel like I mattered to you. I looked at her, at the tears, at her shaking hands, and for a brief, dangerous second, I almost believed her. But then I remembered all the times she'd tried to erase my mother's existence, all the emotional traps disguised as affection. Dad finally spoke. You're being selfish, Alice. Tanya has done nothing but love you, and this is how you repay her? Repay her? I repeated, stunned. You talk about love like it's a transaction. She gives, I owe. That's not love, Dad. That's guilt. His face darkened. She lost a child, Alice. Have you forgotten that? My throat tightened. I wanted to scream that I hadn't forgotten, that I'd lived in the shadow of that loss my entire adolescence, but the words tangled in my chest. Tanya reached out suddenly, touching my arm. I just wanted to feel like I had a daughter again. I flinched. You already had one. You just never let me choose if I wanted to be her. That's when Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough! You think this wedding is only about you, but families aren't built around one person's comfort. I looked at him, feeling the sting behind my eyes. That's exactly what you said when you left Mom. And look how that turned out. Silence, the kind that burns. I stood up, my chair scraping the floor. I'm not changing my mind. Mom will walk me down the aisle. You can come or you can stay home, but I'm done begging you to respect me. Tanya burst into sobs as I left, her voice echoing behind me. You'll regret this, Alice. One day you'll understand how much I loved you. The door closed on her words, but they clung to me all the way home. That night, I sat by the window with Richard beside me. The city lights flickered through the curtains. He took my hand and said, You did the right thing. I nodded, but my chest felt hollow. Then why does it feel like I just lost my family again? He pulled me close. Maybe you didn't lose them, Alice. Maybe you just stopped letting them own you. Weeks passed. I focused on wedding plans, trying to bury the tension under layers of lace and logistics. But every time my phone buzzed, I felt a jolt of fear, half hoping it was Dad, half hoping it wasn't. Then, one evening, Tanya sent a message. I'm sorry for how I acted. Can we talk? Please, just the two of us. Richard frowned when he saw the text. Are you sure you want to meet her? I'm not sure of anything, I admitted, but maybe I need to hear her out. End this once and for all. He kissed my forehead. Then go. But promise me you won't let her make you doubt yourself again. I promised. The next day, I agreed to meet Tanya at a quiet cafe near the university I once attended, the same place I'd spent hours with Richard back when we first fell in love. Back then, it had been my safe place. I didn't realize that after this meeting, I'd never see it the same way again. When I arrived, Tanya was already there, nervously stirring her coffee. Her hands trembled as she smiled. You look beautiful, Alice. I always knew you'd grow into such a graceful woman. I sat across from her, unsure whether to thank her or run. I've been thinking, she continued softly, and I understand your decision. Your mother deserves that walk. I get it now. Relief flickered inside me. Maybe this would finally end peacefully. But then she added, I do have a small favor to ask. Her eyes shone with a strange hope I couldn't read. Would you walk me down the aisle at my vow renewal next year? Just to balance things out. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. For a second, I thought I misheard. You want me to walk you down the aisle? She nodded eagerly, tears gathering in her eyes. Yes, it would mean everything to me. You could wear something lovely, and... Tanya, I interrupted, setting the cup down. My voice was shaking now. My wedding isn't a trade. This isn't about balancing anything. Her expression faltered. But... No, I said, firmer this time. That moment with my mom, it's sacred. It's not something I can replicate for you. The color drained from her face. Then, as if some invisible wall inside her cracked, she whispered, You're just like your mother, cold, always keeping people out. I stared at her, heart pounding. You don't know my mother. Oh, I know enough, she snapped, her composure slipping. She poisoned you against me from the start. That's not true. She wanted me to suffer, Tanya said, voice trembling. She got what she wanted. I lost my baby, and you, my only chance at being a mother, hate me. Something inside me broke then. I leaned forward, whispering, You don't get to use your miscarriage as a weapon. I was 16. You made me carry your grief for years. That wasn't fair. Her eyes filled with horror. How can you say that? Because it's the truth. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Tanya pushed her chair back, tears spilling over. I can't do this, she said. I can't keep trying. And she walked out, fast, shaking, leaving me sitting there amid the clatter of cups and whispers from nearby tables. The rain started as I sat frozen. I should have felt free. Instead, all I felt was empty. When I got home, my phone buzzed. Dad. Do you have any idea what you've done? He roared the moment I answered. You humiliated her. She's heartbroken, Alice. You owe her an apology. I closed my eyes. I am done apologizing for telling the truth. If you can't accept Tanya, he said coldly, maybe you shouldn't think of me as your father anymore. Then the line went dead. I stared at the phone, his words echoing in the silence. For years, I'd feared losing him. But in that moment, I realized he'd been gone for a long time. Long before this call. Long before the wedding fight. That night, Richard found me sitting on the floor, holding my phone like it might burn through my hand. He knelt beside me and said softly, You don't have to carry their chaos anymore. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. It was only the calm before the next collapse. For the first few days after that call, I didn't sleep. I'd lie awake, replaying every word, hearing my father's voice telling me not to call him daughter. Each time, the words hit differently, first like a wound, then like proof of something I had always feared, that his love had conditions. Mom noticed my exhaustion right away. She found me staring at the ceiling one morning, still in my robe, wedding notes scattered beside me. Alice, she said gently, you don't have to keep fixing what other people break. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was just trying to be understood. But even I knew that was a lie. I'd been chasing my father's approval for most of my life, and each time I got close, it slipped away. 3 days later, Tanya called again. I almost didn't pick up. Her voice was small, trembling. Alice, I'm sorry, she said. I went too far. Please, can we talk one more time? I can't stand how things ended. Every instinct told me to say no, but something in her voice, genuine sorrow, or maybe exhaustion, made me pause. Fine, I said at last. One last conversation. We met again at that same cafe, the one now tainted with everything unsaid. It was raining again, because of course it was. The gray light through the window cast a soft reflection of her face on the glass, pale, hollow, almost fragile. When I sat down, she smiled weakly. I didn't mean to upset you, she began. I thought if we could start fresh before the wedding, maybe we could find peace. I folded my arms. Peace isn't something you find by forcing it. Tanya's eyes darted down to her coffee. You've always been good with words, just like your father. I'm nothing like him, I said too quickly. Her lips curved, not quite a smile. You both build walls out of silence when you're hurt. I looked away, stung. The truth in her words annoyed me more than her tone. After a moment, Tanya continued quietly. Do you ever think about forgiveness, Alice? I hesitated. Forgiveness isn't a magic trick. It doesn't erase what happened. But it lets you breathe, she said, staring at the rain. I forgave your father 100 times before he ever apologized. It's how I survived. The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. For a moment, she sounded almost human again. Not the woman who'd manipulated me, not the intruder, just someone broken in a way that mirrored my own cracks. I don't hate you, Tanya, I admitted. I just don't want you to keep trying to fill a role that isn't yours. Her eyes lifted, wet and desperate. Then what am I to you? I didn't know how to answer. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, she sighed. Your father and I were going to renew our vows next year. I blinked, okay? She smiled faintly, nervous. I was thinking maybe you could walk me down the aisle to even things out, since I can't walk you on yours. My stomach dropped. You're joking. No, it would be beautiful symmetry, you and me. Healing. Tanya, I said slowly, this isn't about symmetry. This is my wedding. It's not some emotional barter. Her smile faltered. You don't understand. I've lost everything once already. I can't lose this too. Then stop making everything about what you've lost, I snapped. My voice trembled. You keep using pain as a leash to drag people where you want them. I can't do it anymore. Tanya froze. Her lower lip quivered as she whispered, You're cruel. You've always been cruel to me. I stared at her, feeling anger and pity twist together. No, Tanya. I was a child. You were the adult, and you made me responsible for your grief. For a moment, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Shock, maybe shame, but it vanished. She reached into her purse, pulled out a folded photo, and placed it on the table. It was the ultrasound. This was my baby, she said softly. You think I used that pain? I lived it every day. I swallowed hard. And I lived yours. Every visit, every gift, every guilt trip. You called me your daughter, but you never once asked how it felt for me to lose a family before I was even old enough to understand it. Her composure shattered. She stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. The cafe fell silent. You think you're better than me, she said through tears. But one day when life takes something from you, you'll understand. She grabbed her purse and ran out, her sobs echoing in the doorway. I sat there, staring at the ultrasound photo she left behind, the rain blurring its outline through the window. I didn't chase her. I couldn't. When I got home, I found Richard waiting with 2 mugs of tea. I dropped the photo on the counter and whispered, She's gone. He wrapped his arms around me, and I finally broke down. She said I'm cruel, I sobbed. Richard brushed my hair back. You told the truth. Sometimes that sounds cruel to people who've lived in denial. I wanted to believe that. But later that night, Dad called again, his voice raw, angry, shaking. What did you say to her? He demanded. She's a wreck. She packed a bag. She's talking about leaving. She asked me to walk her down the aisle for her vow renewal, I said flatly. I told her no. You didn't have to be so harsh, he shouted. She's fragile, Alice. You should have understood that. Dad, I whispered, I've been understanding my whole life. There was silence. Then he said quietly, Maybe you should stop calling until you can find some compassion. The line clicked. I stood there in the dark, phone still pressed to my ear. For the first time in years, I didn't cry. I just felt empty. Because somewhere deep down, a part of me knew this conversation wasn't about weddings or forgiveness. It was about something much older, something that began the day he left and never really ended. And now, standing in my kitchen with the rain pounding on the windows, I realized I was still that 10-year-old girl, watching my father choose someone else over me. Only this time, I wasn't going to beg him to stay. A week passed. Silence again. No messages, no calls, just that oppressive quiet that sits between people who've said too much and not enough at the same time. Then, one Saturday afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, my father stood there. He looked smaller. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes sunken, and his hair was uncombed, something I'd never seen before. Dad had always been composed, always the man who straightened his tie even for the grocery store. But that day, he looked like a man who'd lost his center. Can I come in? He asked, His voice was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. Richard hesitated in the doorway before nodding. I'll give you two some space. When the door shut behind him, the silence stretched until Dad finally spoke. She's gone, he said flatly. Tanya left. I froze. What do you mean, left? She packed up, took her things, went to her sister's in another state. She said she couldn't take the rejection anymore. His voice cracked on that word. Rejection. She said she's tired of being reminded she failed as a mother. I swallowed hard. Dad, I didn't ask her to leave. I only told her the truth. I know, he said quietly. I didn't come here to blame you. That was the first surprise. He sat on the edge of my couch, hands clasped together, shaking slightly. I've been doing a lot of thinking since she left, he murmured. About the past. About what we did to you. There was something in his tone, something fragile, something dangerous, that made me brace myself. He looked up, eyes glassy. When Tanya got pregnant all those years ago, it wasn't just because we wanted a baby. She thought, his voice faltered, she thought having a child would make you love her, that it would make us a real family. I stared at him, my chest tightening. You tried to have a baby, to make me accept her? He nodded slowly. She believed if there was a baby, you'd feel connected to her, that maybe you'd see her as more than the woman who replaced your mother. He dragged a hand down his face. I went along with it because I was desperate. I wanted peace. I thought if Tanya could just feel whole again, maybe everything would fall into place. My stomach turned. So that's why you both pushed me so hard to call her Mom. Why you said we needed to heal together. It wasn't about family. It was about control. He winced, but didn't argue. You're right, he whispered. It was wrong. We were wrong. We made you carry the weight of our mistakes. I sat down across from him, every part of me trembling. Do you even realize what that did to me? I spent years feeling guilty, like I'd failed Tanya somehow, like I wasn't enough to make her happy. His eyes filled with tears. I know. I see that now, and I hate myself for it. It was the first time I'd ever seen my father cry. Not at the divorce, not at his wedding to Tanya, not even at the miscarriage, but here, sitting in my apartment, with the smell of old coffee and dust between us, his voice broke open. I wanted to fix what I broke with you, he said, and instead I made it worse. Tanya kept saying, if Alice just loved me, everything would be fine. And I believed her. I thought if I supported her, I was being a good husband and a good father, but I was wrong about both. The anger I'd been holding for years started to crack under the weight of his honesty. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because she's gone, he whispered, and I can't keep lying to myself that we were doing the right thing. I need you to know that none of this was your fault, not her pain, not the miscarriage, not our mess. I stared at him, silent. His words should have healed something, but instead they reopened everything I'd buried. After a long pause, I said quietly, you know what hurts the most? It's not what you did. It's that you never once asked how I felt. You just decided what kind of daughter I should be, and when I didn't fit that version, you blamed me for the distance. Dad nodded, tears spilling freely now. You're right. I was a coward. I thought love meant keeping the peace, even when that peace was built on silence. Something inside me softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. I got up, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed him one. He took it with shaking hands. What are you going to do now? I asked. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe give her time. Maybe give myself time, too. We sat there for a while, the kind of quiet that didn't feel like war anymore. After he left, I called Mom. She listened without interrupting, as she always did. When I told her what Dad confessed, she sighed softly. People do strange things when they're desperate to fix their past, she said. But you can't be the glue for everyone else's cracks, Alice. You're not meant to hold them together. I thought about that long after we hung up. Later that night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights blur through my tears. I thought about Tanya's ultrasound photo still lying in the kitchen drawer. I thought about the teenage girl who once prayed for her father's love to come back. And I thought about the woman I'd become, someone finally willing to let the broken things stay broken. Still, a quiet ache lingered, the kind that came with knowing I might never have a simple version of family. When Richard came home, I leaned against him, exhausted. She's gone, I murmured. And he finally told me the truth. He wrapped his arm around me. And how do you feel? I don't know, I whispered. Lighter, sadder, maybe both. He kissed the top of my head. That's what truth does. It doesn't always set you free. Sometimes it just lets you stop running. And for the first time in years, I stopped. The weeks leading up to the wedding moved in slow motion. Between final fittings, menu changes, and last-minute RSVPs, there was always a quiet emptiness in the background, a silence where my father's presence should have been. Then one morning, as I was reviewing seating charts, an email arrived. The sender, Dad. My heart stuttered. I hesitated before clicking it open. Alice, I read your message. Thank you for being honest with me. I don't deserve to be part of your day, but I want to come, if only to see you happy. I'll respect your boundaries. I'll come alone. No, Tanya. I hope one day we can start over, even if it's slow. Love, Dad. My eyes blurred halfway through. For the first time, he wasn't demanding, defending, or justifying, just acknowledging. It wasn't an apology wrapped in guilt. It was quiet, plain, and real. I replied simply, You're welcome to come, Dad. Thank you for understanding. When I told Mom, she nodded slowly. That's good, honey. It means he's learning what love without conditions looks like. Richard smiled when I shared the news. Looks like your family's finally choosing peace. Maybe, I said, though a part of me still wasn't sure. Or maybe we're just tired of bleeding. The morning of the wedding came bright and warm, the air soft with sunlight. I woke early to the sound of my mother humming in the next room. When I stepped out, she was already in her dress. Simple, elegant, the same calm she'd worn through every storm of my life. Ready to become Mrs. Hollis? She teased, her smile glowing. Barely, I laughed through a lump in my throat. She helped zip up my gown. For a moment, we stood facing the mirror, the reflection of two women who had survived more than anyone knew. She brushed a stray curl from my shoulder and whispered, You know, I used to dream of walking you down the aisle. Not because of the tradition, but because I wanted you to know you'd never have to walk alone. That broke me. I turned and hugged her tightly, my tears staining the silk on her shoulder. You never let me, I whispered. Not once. The ceremony was held at a small countryside chapel wrapped in ivy. Rows of white chairs curved beneath an old oak tree, its branches strung with lights. Guests filled the seats, a soft buzz of voices and laughter rising in the warm breeze. When the music started, I felt Mom squeeze my hand. The doors opened, and we stepped forward together. Every eye turned toward us, but mine went straight to the front row, where Dad sat alone. He looked older, thinner, but when our eyes met, he smiled, softly, like someone seeing the sun after a long winter. I felt something inside me loosen. Mom leaned in and whispered, Go on, sweetheart, he's proud of you. We walked the rest of the way in silence. At the altar, Richard's expression was all I needed, the mix of awe, love, and calm that had anchored me through every storm. When the vows began, my voice trembled. I didn't talk about perfection or promises. I spoke about endurance, forgiveness, and choosing love even when it scares you. And when Richard said his vows, his hands were steady as he promised, I will never make you carry my ghosts. The audience laughed softly. Some teared up, but when I glanced at my father, I saw tears streaming down his face. For once, I didn't feel anger, just quiet understanding. At the reception, the sun dipped low, painting everything gold. I moved between tables, greeting relatives and friends, but my gaze kept drifting to where Dad sat with a cup of tea, watching from afar. Finally, I walked over. He stood before I could speak. You look beautiful, he said, voice breaking. Your mother must be so proud. She is, I said, but I think you are too. He nodded, smiling sadly. I am, more than you'll ever know. For a heartbeat, we just stood there, two people who had said terrible things and survived them. Thank you for coming, I whispered. Thank you for letting me, he replied. And Alice, he hesitated. I'm sorry, for everything I made you carry, for trying to fix what I broke in the wrong ways. I know, I said softly. You don't have to keep saying it. He shook his head. Maybe I do, until it stops hurting. I reached out and squeezed his hand. Then say it once more and let it go. He smiled, a tired, grateful smile, and nodded. As I turned to leave, he said, Tell your mother, she still has my respect, always did. That, more than anything, felt like healing. Later that night, after the dancing and laughter faded, I stood outside under the string lights with Richard. The stars shimmered faintly above the garden. He slipped his arm around me. You did it, he murmured. You made peace with your past. Maybe not peace, I said, resting my head on his shoulder, but maybe I stopped fighting it. He kissed my hair. That's enough. As I looked out over the field, the lights, the laughter, my mother talking politely with my father, I realized something. Families don't always heal neatly. Sometimes forgiveness doesn't look like hugs or perfect endings. Sometimes it's just sitting in the same room without hate. I thought about Tanya, wherever she was. I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't miss her either. I just hoped she'd find whatever peace she'd been searching for. That night, before leaving for the hotel, I wrote her a short letter I knew I'd never send. Tanya, you were never my mother, but you were part of my story. I hope you find healing, not through me, but through yourself. We both deserve that. I folded it, tucked it into my journal, and closed it for good. As the car pulled away, Richard squeezed my hand. Ready for our new life? I smiled through the reflection of streetlights flickering across the window. More than ready. Because that day, walking down the aisle beside my mother, I finally realized something no one had ever taught me. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting what was done to you. It's about refusing to let it define what comes next. And as we drove into the night, husband and wife, past and future, I felt light again. For the first time, truly light.